Hi there, and welcome to the latest edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is brought to you by fans for fans, and where the content is absolutely free. It is episode 209 of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast. I'm your host tonight. I'm Colin Armstrong. As I say every week, guys, it's not just the pod we do here at Gersnet. If you get yourself onto the website, you'll find the forums there, articles. There's a history archive on the website as well, so get yourself on that. Obviously, we'd always ask you to promote the pod as well, put the word out there, subscribe to the YouTube channel, all that kind of a stuff. Before I bring my guests in, I need to mention our partners at Forest Precision Engineering, who are a subcontract Glasgow-based engineering company and have been a big supporter, a commercial supporter of Rangers for many, many years. We're delighted they're back in the pod. If you want more information on them, you can go visit their website at www.forestprecisioneng.com. They also have a suite in the main stand, a stunning new suite within the hospitality area within the main stand. If you're looking for information on that in terms of maybe giving it a wee visit for a game one day, you can email the club, get details by emailing the club at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. And before I bring my guests in, it would be remiss of me, I meant to mention this on Friday in the preview show. Didn't mention Jimmy Miller. I was meant to mention him. I forgot all about it. Very sad news that he passed away last week there. Obviously, a minute's silence at the game yesterday, 87 years of age. Scored 162 goals for Rangers in 317 appearances, and was later inducted into the Hall of Fame. And he's probably most famous for being part of that famous team in the 60s, which we all know. Ritchie, Shearer, Proven, Greg, McKinnon, Baxter, Henderson, McLean, Miller, Brandon Wilson. So very sad news, and the thoughts of everyone here at Gersnet is with Jimmy's friends and family at this sad time. So I'll bring in my guests now as we look at an interesting weekend. So first, I'll bring in Brian. How are you, Brian? Are you there, Brian?
Yep. Yeah, I'm just about recovering for yesterday. Not too bad, all things considered, but been better.
I thought you decided not to bother after all. Just thought, fuck this, I'm not going to talk about this. Just bail out. And who could blame you? We've also got Dougie tonight. How are you, Dougie?
Yeah, I'm not bad as well, all things considering. My eldest has chicken pox. We went on holiday last week and had to come home early. And then I didn't make the game because she wasn't well and I had a wedding the night before. And I suppose that's a positive outlook, that I wasn't there. I didn't have to watch it in the flesh, although I did for my sins sit and watch it in a live stream. So yeah, I've had a good weekend other than the football.
Well, I don't know what to say. I mean, a result and performance like that is enough just to, no matter what else happens in the weekend for me, Dougie, that's it. The weekend's a write-off. So yeah, really disappointing game, disappointing performance and result. I think we need to sort of pick the bones out of everything that's happened and where it leaves us. Obviously, a lot of questions about Gio and stuff like that. So we'll get right in about it. Brian, I'll come at you first. I mean, I was on the preview show on Friday night there talking to Craig, and we were sort of saying, even although we're struggling performance-wise, the results are actually not bad. We're on a decent run of form in the league. Celtic are starting to concede. They're looking a bit ropey, and they did look a bit ropey for stages on Saturday there. They were 2-1 down, and then it was 3 each, and you thought, they might drop points. They get a sort of semi-late winner, and then we go on to drop points, and all of a sudden it becomes a really shit weekend. So we were sort of talking on Friday that the results are not bad, but the performances are really bad. That performance against Dundee is horrific. The performance has now led to a bad result. We've slipped further behind Celtic. Just a really bad day at the office, and not a good atmosphere at Ibrox yesterday, I felt. There was a few empty seats round about me, crowd were a bit grumbly. Just a shit day at the office, really.
Yeah, there was a few empty seats round about me as well. To be honest, I listened to the pod on Friday and I agreed with pretty much all of what you and Craig said. I was kind of all for defending Gio at that point, saying, look, performances aren't great, but we're still getting the results. At some point, those performances need to turn. But I think we kind of went the other way, and at some point, when you're playing that poorly, at some point you get found out and results start to match performances, and I think that's what we're seeing now. I wasn't at the Dundee game and I didn't watch it, so I'd heard it was a really bad performance, but I didn't see it, so I was kind of like, not really sure what to expect. And I watched that yesterday, and there was just nothing positive to say about it at all. It was just the same stuff we tried for 90 minutes. Just get the ball wide, cross it in, they head it out, rinse and repeat for 90 minutes. It was just nothing positive about it at all, really, to be honest.
No, it was pretty grim, and I think, you know, the concern started for me anyway when I saw the starting lineup. A wee bit surprised to see Stephen Davis in there. Big fan of Stephen Davis. I'm still astounded to this day that the season with 155 that Gersnet gave the Player of the Year to Connor Golson. I thought Stephen Davis was outstanding that season. But I think you can see that this season that, you know, time's catching up on him a wee bit, and I think we need to pick and choose when we play him. I still think he's got a lot to offer, but I was a wee bit surprised to see him in there yesterday. And Scott Arfield was playing on the right wing for most of that first half. You know, you're just thinking, a really strange team selection, really strange formation. And I'll be honest with you, in that first half, I was really struggling to see what Gio was trying to do, what he was attempting to do with this formation.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can pick the bones out of the players and whether he put out the right players. Gio spoke after the match of wanting to start with an intensity. I'm not sure what level of intensity he's expecting when he's playing a 37-year-old in an advanced central midfield position. You've got guys like Tillman who, you know, we were just speaking before the podcast started, fantastic technical player, but he's got a heart of a mouse. He's not somebody that's going to work his arse off and win back possession. And I think that's what Gio wants from a high-intensity team. When you've got Davis in the team, you've got Tillman there. Trolak's not exactly a hard worker. You're not going to get a high-intensity team, a hard-working team. But then you look at individual positions and you just think it's the same positions over and over again that we've been going on about for 3 seasons now that need to be strengthened. And we're going to speak about Ross Wilson later in the show. But it's just so frustrating that you're looking at who partners John Lundstrom in midfield. Stephen Davis, a 37-year-old. It was, you know, as you said, we should be using him sparingly. And then on the right wing, we've been speaking about needing a quality right winger for a number of years now. We spent money on Matondo in the summer. We're playing Scott Arfield there. You know, Scott Arfield turns 34 next month. He's a central midfield player, and we're playing him on the right-hand side. So yeah, as you said, the problems for me started when you look at the lineup. I don't think the lineup suits the style of football that Gio wants to play. But then there's arguments over 2 things. One, what is the style of football that Gio's wanting to play? And 2, Brian said it before the show started. That team, those starting 11, the subs that we've got available, should be good enough to beat Livingston. Realistically, we should be able to beat Livingston. And unfortunately for us, Gio's been outsmarted by David Martindale, who is a very good manager. But with the resources that we've got available in comparison to Livingston, we should be blowing them away.
Brian, I mean, the first game of the season, obviously, we were at Livingston that day, conceded the early goal, Joel Newbley, and it's just that sort of comical, farcical element of it. We've done exactly the same thing yesterday. You know, we've conceded that early goal, same player scoring, and it just felt like lazy defending, a really slack goal to concede. And like I said to my son yesterday, that, you know, the worst thing we can do is concede against Livingston first, because that gives them the opportunity to do what they do, which is basically a 6-man defence and force you to lump balls into the box, and you know, they can obviously deal with that. So just really disappointing that we lost that early goal and never got a foothold in the game, because, you know, as it transpired, the way Rangers are playing at the moment, you always felt if we go a goal behind, this could be a long day at the office.
Yeah, I think we got out of jail in the first game of the season when we went a goal behind and we managed to claw it back. And I think we were all kind of willing to give the team a bit of a pass on that day, because it was first game of the season. You know, generally we don't think about the blocks flying, but we got the win in the end, and that was all that mattered. But yesterday, I mean, Tav's defending for that first goal was so poor and so weak. If we're to believe him when he says after the game that he's fit and he's fine, then he should be dropped on form alone, because that is just so poor. To concede that goal and we could have went 2 behind. We were lucky, you know.
Yeah.
They had the chance soon after.
It was a really good chance, actually.
If they went 2 behind, I don't know what Ibrox would have been like, because it was pretty unpleasant for most of that game, and I dread to think what it would have been like if we'd have went 2 behind. But as soon as we went 1 behind, I mean, everyone round about me said the same thing. You know, this is what Livingston came here for. You know, they get an early goal and they'll sit back and they'll force us to go wide and chuck it into the box where they've got 2 big centre halves. They'll head the ball away all day long, and we fell into the trap. And that was kind of the most disappointing thing, was that we fell into the trap. That was exactly what they wanted us to do, and we didn't have any imagination or ingenuity to, you know, create anything through the middle without just lumping balls at the box. And that seems to be the trap this team falls into more often than not. We've seen it under Gerrard, we've seen it under Gio, and it's possibly more than just the manager, is it the players that subconsciously they just go back to this way of playing when they're under pressure, that they just start getting it wide, lumping aimless balls into the box and just hope something comes from it. And, you know,
it's a horseshoe, isn't it? You know, we go down the left, if nothing's happening, it goes back to the centre halves and out to the right, and then we find a position where we can cross it into the box. That just seems to be that literally seems to be the sort of, what's the word, identity that we have at the moment, if you want to call it that.
That's exactly what the Feyenoord fans complained about when we heard, you know, them speaking when Gio got the job. We'd heard a few of them speaking, and they said the same thing, that this is the kind of reason that they were kind of getting fed up with him, and they kind of wanted a change when he left there. And we're sort of seeing that now. This appears to be the way Gio wants to play, is this kind of slow, patient build-up, passing it round the back, kind of no pace, no real intensity about it, and you just kind of don't know where you go from that. I can't see how he takes us from this to where we need to get to start, you know, being competitive against Celtic and ultimately winning the league.
Dougie, one of the things that really worried me yesterday was, you know, when we go a goal behind, whenever Rangers ever go a goal behind, the one thing you're looking for is a reaction. You know, you look for an increase in the tempo and the urgency, and okay, we're a goal behind, we now need 2. And I just didn't see it. There was just absolutely no reaction. It just seemed to be the same, the same stuff as sort of Brian was talking about there, going down one side, coming back, and down the other, lumping it into the box. The same sort of turgid, slow tempo, slow pace, no urgency. And you're looking at it thinking, you know, I think I looked at the scoreboard after half an hour. I was like, they've been leading for like the best part of half an hour, you know, because they scored within 3 minutes. And I'm yet to see any sort of evidence that this Rangers team is worried about that. You know, they don't seem to be up in it. They don't seem to be, you know, trying to create things, getting behind, you know, the fullbacks and turning defenders and all that kind of thing. It was just the same stuff over and over again. No sort of increase in urgency or tempo or anything like that. And I know we've got to look at Gio and we will, but I also look at the players and think, well, do you actually want to win this league? You know, if you're only reacting to going a goal down, then you may as well chuck it.
Yeah, bang on. I think Brian covered the tactical element. I think in terms of that slow, patient football that we all witnessed for the first half, I think that's how Gio is asking the players to play. So I think they are technically executing what their manager's asked. Not as well as what he wants, obviously, but I think he wants a horseshoe. I think he wants that patient, slow build-up where you create chances through retaining possession, which is not pleasing on the eye, and I'm sure we'll come on to it later on. But whilst that can be said, it needs to be said that these players carry responsibility. You know, this is a group of players that have delivered 2 memorable moments that will live with me for a lifetime. You know, the core group of this team won 55, that stopped 10 in a row. And it's the same group of players that got to a Europa League final, which is arguably my favourite ever moment as a Rangers supporter. So this core group of players have delivered 2 amazing moments for me as a Rangers fan. But they've let us down time and time again. And I think a large part of that is leadership. I think when you look through that starting 11 yesterday, it was just lacking leadership. And it surprises me sometimes when you lack leadership, because you've got all different types of leaders. And on the park yesterday, you've got McGregor, you've got Tavernier, you've got Lundstrom, you've got Davis, these are all experienced footballers that know what it takes to win, that want to be here, that have been here for a number of years. Oh, but it was just, as you say, it was just nobody grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck. And I think that's probably it for me, is we probably lack that ownership, that responsibility, that accountability more in the final third of somebody who can just get the ball and make things happen. You go back to our 9-0 campaign, in that kind of game at half time, you'd be going around and pushing something like Gaza, and they would literally just get the ball and make things happen on their own. We don't have that in this current team. I seen Frankie put out in the forum asking who the man of the match was. Ben Davies was excellent. He got the Gersnet man of the match. I actually thought it was Ryan Kent's best performance in a number of weeks as well. But he's the only player for me that's capable of something, just getting the ball and running forward. I've already been critical of Malik Tillman. There was large periods of the game that Tillman, you would not know that Tillman was on the pitch. And I think that's the issue for me, is some of these guys, whilst they've got the technical ability, whilst they're good footballers, they need to want to win. They need to want to put the ball in the back of the net, and we need to see more from these players.
It kind of struck me, like, it was my son that pointed it out yesterday. Like, every time the ball was in the penalty box, like a goal kick or something like that, McGregor is the only one that shows any level of urgency. He's the one that's like, give me the ball, let's get this moving. And the minute he, passes it out to the fullback or goes long or whatever, then the tempo comes back down, and you're thinking, our 40-year-old goalkeeper is the only guy that shows like he's got any sort of desire or urgency to win.
It was funny you say that. Actually, I thought you were going to say something else, which was, we spoke about the 73 crosses. Every single time a ball was crossed into the box, it almost always went to the back post. When it was going to the back post, the winger was never there. If it was Barisic putting the ball into the back post, Scott Arfield was never there. He was always in the middle of the box. So I think urgency was terrible. But I just think that the whole team shape just now is poor as well. We spoke about the start on 11. One thing I forgot to mention in there is Scott Wright had a blinder against Dundee.
Yeah.
Yes, we were turgid against Dundee. We were booed off the pitch. But it was this. The rumour is he was carrying a slight knock. He didn't make the starting 11. I thought Bonner wasn't that bad, considering a lot of the time.
Bonner played well yesterday. I would have argued that Bonner was in a shout for man of the match, in my opinion. But
yeah, it was one of his
game of
games.
opinions.
Yeah, definitely. I thought Bonner, for once, didn't always look for McGregor when he was running towards goal. But the other player for me was Scott Wright. I was just saying, for me, Scott Wright against Dundee was somebody that wanted to go forward. He wanted to make things happen. He was in the right place at the right time. And when I seen Scott Arfield at right wing, I thought, a bit unusual. And then I think you've got to feel a bit unfortunate for Scott Wright that when Scott Arfield's been taken off, certain points we've had Matondo, Sakala, Roof all on the pitch, but the guy who put in an excellent performance midweek hasn't got any minutes. That for me is on the manager. The manager, some of the decisions that he makes sometimes with the starting 11, the subs, are baffling. They really are baffling.
Brian, the second half, at half time I said to my son, I'm kind of with Dougie in this. I was a wee bit surprised Scott Wright didn't start yesterday. When you consider the opposition and the fact that he had quite a decent game on Wednesday night. I know a lot of supporters don't like him. I know he's limited. I know he's not the answer, but given, I think that right side is killing us at the moment. We've just got nothing down there at all. If you were to offer me Scott Arfield down that right-hand side or Scott Wright, I think I'd be taking Scott Wright because he gives you that sort of pace, urgency, that kind of thing. So I said to my son at half-time, I'd take Stephen Davis off, I'd move Arfield into that attacking midfield role, the sort of number 10 or whatever you want to call it, and I'd bring Scott Wright on. And he brought on Matondo. I was a wee bit surprised at that. A wee bit surprised at Leon King going off as well, but we'll leave that one for now. So second half slightly, but I thought we started well in the second half. First 5 minutes, a wee bit improvement. It was slowly sort of slip into the usual pace and tempo and all the stuff that we've been speaking about earlier on tonight. Get the sort of equaliser late on, and then the urgency comes. All of a sudden they start creating chances left, right, and centre, and we arguably should have got the winner with Lundstrom right at the death of that header. He should get it on target. And given where the keeper was, I think if he gets on target, it goes in. But you're thinking, like, the last sort of 6-7 minutes, I'm like, why weren't he playing like this the full game? You know what I mean? If you played like this the full game, you'd have won the game. And I mean, I don't think we can argue with the result. I really don't. I don't think we've done enough to win it yesterday. But I'm looking at the last sort of 7 minutes, you know, because of Livingston's horrific time wasting, and because we have ball boys that every time the ball went out, there was about bloody 7 balls getting chucked back on the park, which helped him to do their time wasting. But I just thought, why did you not show that urgency and that tempo for longer, especially in that second half? I think if they'd done that, they'd have won the game.
Yeah, everybody in that last kind of 6 or 7 minutes, when we did start to show that urgency and that tempo, everybody round about me was saying, well, where was this for the last 90 minutes? That was the attitude, and it just, I mean, I don't really know. I kind of expected, we went one down early, so I was thinking, you know, we went one down, I thought, right, there's no panic stations here, we've got, you know, 85 plus minutes to sort this, and I thought we would pin them back and we'd be raining shots in on their goalkeeper, and you know, the pressure would tell and they would cave at some point. But we never really built up that sustained period of pressure. We never looked like really pinning them back to the edge of their box and playing quick 1-2s around the box to try and get in, or even making their keeper work. I can't really remember sustained kind of shots that we had on their goal when their keeper making wonder saves or anything like that. It was all just hopeful balls into the box, hoping that Cholak would get his head on the end of it because he's the biggest player in there. And if we put it in a general area where he is, then hopefully he'll get in there, forgetting that they've got 2 massive centre halves that will just eat it up all day. And then I thought his subs were kind of a bit desperate. I mean, he just kind of threw on Roof and Morelos and thought, right, I'll put 2 extra attackers on. If we get, you know, surely something will happen. I didn't really feel that there was a plan behind the subs. I mean, he brings Matondo on and then takes him off again. Now, for me, that writes a player's career off at a club. When you do that, when you sub a sub, you know, that's considered one of the kind of worst things for to happen to a player in terms of your confidence. And
there is an argument. I have seen people online suggesting he was injured. I didn't think that was the case. I'm with you. I just think he had such a stinker of a game, and he thought it's not working.
An indictment on how he was playing, or how Gio thought he was playing.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm surprised not more has been made of that, because I thought, you know, there's a rumoured £3 million signing, and he's brought him on, and then 20 minutes, half an hour later, he's taken him off again. I mean, that's quite the statement for me.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll get confirmation in Gio's press conference, you know, going up to the Napoli game, but certainly where I was, the feeling was, it didn't look like he was injured. You know, the feeling was he just had an absolute stinker. But you know, we'll see what comes out. Dougie sending off in the second half. You know, it was the first day of VAR being used in Scotland. Morgan Boys tackle on Morelos. I thought even in the Govan, I'm in the Govan rear. I thought at the time it looked a red. So how the referee thought it was a yellow, I don't know. I thought it was really high, straight leg, could have done him some real damage. So went to VAR, so the yellow card's been upgraded from a yellow to a red. So first day it's been used domestically at Ibrox. Did you feel it was a success? Because one thing I will say, I mean, there was no major issues. I did think at our goal, we were waiting an awful long time to get confirmation. You know, the referee wasn't kicking off the game, standing with his finger in his ear, but nothing on the screens to say there was a goal check going on. And you're thinking, the fuck's going on here? And just the way things are at the moment, you think, no, this is going to be chopped off, no doubt. So that would be the only mild grumbling I would have about it. But overall, you would have to say it worked okay.
Eventful day for VAR in Scottish football. I get what you're saying about the time. I watched the highlights. I watched the Celtic game live for my sins, and I think there was delays across every game in Scottish football when the referees were making a decision. But for me, and I get that it's frustrating when you're inside the stadium and you don't know what's happening. But for me, it's about getting the right decision and taking the boys' challenge on Morelos in isolation. For me, that's the type of challenge that we've seen unpunished over the past couple of years. That's put some of our players out for long term. You look at the injuries to Graham Dorrans and Ryan Jack. It was because of reckless, out of control challenges. And I'm with you, Colin. I think at first glance, the studs are up. It hits Morelos in the shin. I think it's a clear red card, and David Martindale agreed that it was a sending off. And I think with VAR, what VAR's doing is it's allowing the referee to look at instance a second time and make a decision on it. I don't want to talk too much about Celtic, but you look at the Hearts game, for example, and the penalty that they had. You look at that again in isolation. When I seen it first time, I thought stonewall penalty. The referee didn't give it. It was flagged back by VAR. VAR looked at it. They gave the decision. For me, that's the benefit of VAR, is it should allow officials to get the decision right. Maybe not first time, but it means that the decision's right, and it should hopefully make sure that there's no major talking points about decisions being missed.
Have you not been watching Match of the Day for the last 2-3 years now? I mean, it's pretty much every week, but I was setting you up for Chris Sutton there. Honestly, I love the narrative that's coming out across the other side of the city. It's almost like it was rehearsed, Colin, where they thought, we're going to get, finally, people are going to realise that we're getting favourable decisions by the officials. We're going to get one against us, i.e. the Hearts penalty. And what we're going to do is we're going to kick up a stink about it so that it puts officials under pressure for the next time they're reviewing one of our incidents. It's a Celtic playbook over and over again. And it's something that they do well. They manage the narrative. They put pressure under the officials. And it's something I've been very critical of us for, because we don't do it. For me, we are far too nice. Brian, I mean, I don't want to go on about this too much because, we want to focus on Rangers rather than Celtic, but I was a bit pissed off when I was sort of catching up on Twitter this morning, and Sutton and Hartson came out with the identical comment, Celtic had to beat two teams today. They had to beat Hearts. They had to beat VAR. Tom Boyd doing his usual pish. It does feel orchestrated. You know what I mean? Day one of VAR, Celtic win. They extend their lead at the top of the table, and they're still putting pressure on officials and moaning about things from a sort of referee's perspective. It feels orchestrated and a sort of deliberate attempt to put pressure on.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this movie before. They kind of get the narrative out there early, and then when they're not doing so well, they can kind of peddle that narrative again.
Yeah.
And it's easier to get that narrative out there when they're winning. It doesn't look like sour grapes. So, I mean, in many ways, they're kind of clever about it. It's probably something Rangers haven't done well enough in terms of controlling the media and getting the narrative out there. And we know that guys like Sutton and Hartson they're fed these lines, and we know where it comes from. And it's no surprise when they say that. Sutton's a totally different pundit when he pundits for English football than what he is.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
And it's not even they don't even try to hide it really. It's fairly obvious. So it wasn't really a surprise to me when I seen comments from Sutton and Hartson and others about Celtic beating two teams on Saturday. It's just to be expected, to be honest.
Yeah, it's. I mean, what you're saying there about Sutton. I mean, on the Monday Night Club, he's completely different. The only time he gets that sort of the Sutton that we know is when he's talking about Celtic. So yeah, I just kind of pissed me off a bit this morning. But anyway, right, Brian, on to the sort of hot topic. Gio, his position. Another really, really bad performance, and I don't think we can understate that. Myself and Craig were talking about performance versus results on Friday, as I said earlier on, and I think you can argue domestically the results have been decent, apart from the Celtic game's obviously a bad one. But another really poor performance. Really struggling to understand what his sort of philosophy is, his identity is. I think there's a feeling that when it comes to team selection, he's just throwing enough shit at the wall and hoping something that sticks. Team booed off at half time, booed off at full time. A really sort of horrible atmosphere at Ibrox yesterday. The longer the game went on, he sort of admitted himself yesterday in the press conference that he's under pressure. I think David Martindale made a comment that was quite damning, saying we knew what they would do. They're just going to get it wide, lump balls into the box. It's when you read it like that, it's pretty poor. However, I think I read a stat today that we're actually better off points wise now than we were at this point last season. Our domestic form's been pretty decent of late. I don't know where I am with you. I'm not defending him by any stretch of the imagination, because I can't watch football like that for a full season. I don't think I'll be able to watch performances like that for the full winter, let alone the full season. But I'm thinking of it from the board's point of view. If you sit down and speak to him and saying, right, we're not very happy, he's going to say, well, I got used to a European final, I won the Scottish Cup, I qualified for the Champions League, and I'm only 4 points behind Celtic, and I've got an injury list as long as my arm. Once the players come back, I think we're in a better place to move forward. So I just don't know. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of people saying he should go. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced he's the right man, but I'm also not convinced that he should go. Where are you on this?
I'm a bit like you in that I struggle with it purely for the reason that, much like everyone, I really want Gio to succeed. He gave me one of the best nights I've ever had following Rangers last season, and Leipzig at home, and that was his team that gave me that, and that'll live with me forever. That night, I mean, that was just incredible. But for me, it's getting to the stage where when we look at performances, and if we're being realistic and we look at where we're at and where we need to get to be really serious challengers here, I just don't see how we can turn it around to go from the style of play that we're playing just now to what we need to be playing, to be scoring goals and really putting these teams to the sword. I just don't see how. That's quite a drastic change for me, and I don't see how he gets there, to be honest. I think it's getting to the stage of a when rather than if. And if we look at the fixtures we've got coming up, we're only going to Naples on Wednesday. I'm sure that'll be a straightforward one, and then we'll get Aberdeen on Saturday. And nobody can tell me that Jim Goodwin's not going to look at that game on Saturday and play a similar style, and he'll have his team right up for it. We know where Jim Goodwin's allegiances lie. He won't need any extra motivation to try and get one over on Rangers. So I can see that being a tough task as well. And I just don't see how it gets, as good as it kind of needs to get to for us to get to where we want to get to this season. There needs to be a massive, massive improvement from the point we're at just now, and I just don't see anything in there that's telling me Gio's capable of that.
Again, in terms of if he does go, I mean, it's one thing saying we need to get rid of this guy, he's not good enough. But who do we get? Who do we bring in to replace him? I've got to be honest with you. I mean, I'm of an age when a Rangers manager left, it was usually someone who was managing another Scottish club that took the job, and so you always had a rough idea who was coming in. We're now at this stage where it's it's international managers and all that kind of thing. I don't have enough knowledge of the what the current market is in terms of managers that are available. So who do we bring in? Because that, as it looks to me, I mean, I've heard people talking about Michael Beale. I don't think that's happening. I think if he's turning down Wolves, if he's turning down the Premier League, I don't think he's going to come back to Rangers. I just can't see who we're going to bring in.
Yeah, I think before I talk about replacements, I'm going to agree with both of you and say, I was thinking about what I was going to say when I come on the pod tonight about Gio, and I'm still on the fence, because for everything that you've mentioned about his win rate, the Europa League last season, the fact that he won silverware, we're only 4 points behind, the injury list, I'm still on the fence about where the future lies on Gio. But the reality is that when you lose the supporters, there's no coming back. And we've just seen it down at Aston Villa with Steven Gerrard, that when the fans started singing "Get out of our club," the board had to act. And I think when you've mentioned it there, Brian, when you look at the fixtures ahead, I see a tough week for us. I think Naples is going to be a sore one, and Aberdeen are a team on form. I think next weekend has a huge weekend written all over it, and I think if we do drop points, I think that signals the end for Gio, and I will feel very sad about it. Whilst I'm sitting here really angry at the current position that we're in, because Steven Gerrard spoke about fixing the roof whilst the sun is still shining, and we failed to do that. I'm angry because we're in this position where we've got a manager who's led us to a European final, who's delivered one of the best moments in my lifetime. And for me, he's not been backed in the summer. We've got a massive injury list and we're now talking about getting rid of him. So I really struggle. But what I will say about his replacement, and I think it's where Gio and Gerrard differ so significantly. Gerrard just had this leadership, this passion that I think as supporters we all really bought into to Steven Gerrard, and he really motivated us. Gio is very different. You know, he's much more continental in his relaxed approach, and he is pretty chilled. He's a pretty laid back guy, and therefore some of his press conferences at times can be a bit dull. And you just think, how does that translate into pre-match pep talks? Is he inspiring confidence amongst the team to go out there and really get the result? So if we're looking at replacements, I think the point I'm making is it needs to be a strong character. It can't be another laid back, tactical manager. I think we're really looking for somebody who's inspirational, who's a real natural leader. There's a lot of names out there. I also think it needs to be someone with a clear brand of football, somebody who can buy into how we want to play football. We've spoken about we want to play a 4-3-3. Interestingly, it's what Ross Wilson said he recruited Gio for, because he plays the same formation that we want to play. I don't think we've seen that. So there's a lot of names out there. I think the one that interests me is Knutsen, that's Bodo Glimt. I think his brand of football is very good. He's won 2 league titles recently over in Norway. I like the look of him. He's never managed outside of Scandinavia, and that's the risk. Is he another Ronny Deila? And I think that's the thing, is every manager is going to be a risk. It's also going to take us millions of pounds to get rid of Gio. It's probably going to cost in the region of £5 million to get rid of Gio, his backroom team, and then bring somebody else in. And something that's just niggling away at me just now as well is, if you gave Gio that £5 million to go and sign a centre mid that plays alongside John Lundstrom, is that the difference that we're lacking? So I'm really on the fence, but for me it's someone like Knutsen. Bielsa's been named. Bielsa clearly ticks a lot of boxes. He's another inspirational guy that I've spoken about. He's got a clear brand of football. But there's a lot of people that favour a British manager, that want somebody that knows the game, that knows Rangers. And a lot of people are pointing towards Sean Dyche, who was formerly at Burnley. And whilst I thought he'd done a very, very good job at Burnley, to go from Giovanni van Bronckhorst, who has such a high pedigree in the game, to someone like Sean Dyche, I think you might get him. I think someone like Sean Dyche might get the best out of players and get a reaction from the players, but I'd question whether he has the same global appeal that Gerrard had, that Gio has, for example, whether we'd be able to strengthen on the Sean Dyche brand, for example. So I don't know is the honest answer, Colin. But I think, as it's been said, I think it's sooner rather than later with Gio's departure. And I really hope that Ross Wilson, if he's still here, is working his way through a list and sounding out candidates as we speak, ready for that time, because we can't have another period where you've got B team managers running the team, get into Hampden like we had last season against Hibs.
Brian, I mean, I want to talk about the supporters now. So it was a bit of a toxic atmosphere at Ibrox yesterday. As I said earlier, there was a few empty seats, to start feeling that the majority have turned against Gio and want him out. But I want to sort of ask, is that valid? Is it an overreaction? Is what I'm trying to ask. Because I was looking at the form table today. Livingston are third in the form table, so you could argue that it was always going to be a difficult game yesterday. Celtic struggled to beat Hearts yesterday. They're currently second bottom the form table at the moment. They've won 1 game in their last 6. Yeah, they struggled. We've seen enough of Gio. He's got to a European final. He won as a Scottish Cup for the first time in a number of years. I just wonder, is it an overreaction? And also, when I think historically, precedent to sacking managers and all that kind of thing, like my first Rangers manager was John Gregg. I mean, he never won the league title for 5 years. Do you know what I mean? And there was never really any talk of him getting the sack at that time. I saw somebody going on yesterday saying this is the worst run of results the Rangers team's ever had, and the guy still kept his job. And I mean, stuff like that is just absolute nonsense. I mean, Alex McLeish in 05-06 went 6 league games without a win. I mean, we've been through worse periods than this, and we've not sacked the manager. So is it an overreaction? Because at the end of the day, yesterday was a bad one. The other drop points, the other draw we had at Easter Road, you could argue that was down to poor refereeing by Willie Colin that day. I think we get the 3 points that day if he doesn't send Lundstrom off. The injury list, all that kind of thing. Are we just overreacting at the moment because there's this perception that we're struggling, we're getting, pumped in Europe at the moment, and we've had such a good run in Europe of late. Okay, one thing I can't defend Gio on is the 2 thumpings against Celtic. But when you put the whole picture together, I just wonder if it's as bad as what people are making out, particularly the results. I know performances are bad, but is it as bad as what people are making out?
I think there's a lot of things that go into it for me. I think managing any of the old firms sort of a different beast than if you're managing, let's say, Chelsea down south, being that, if Chelsea lose 2 out of 5 games, nobody's calling for a manager to be sacked because they know that their rivals round about them have got as much chance of dropping points. Whereas up here, if we lose 2 out of 5 games, the form the other half of the city are on, we can't guarantee they're going to be dropping points anytime soon. So you're playing under a completely different level of pressure. And to my mind, it's completely unique. I can't think of any other league where it's a complete 2-horse race where if one side drops points, it's almost seen as a crisis. And I think that's the kind of level of pressure you're playing under. And I think it just makes it for a really unique situation where if you're on the outside looking in, you probably look at our form and you think, what's all the crisis about? They're only 4 points behind. The next round of the Cup, all right, they're getting beat in Europe, but, possibly we might have expected to struggle there this season. But I think a lot of people from the outside looking in probably would be thinking, where's the crisis? But if you're actually in it, and we are so hungry for success, we're used to success now, in the kind of age of social media, when you're talking about Alex McLeish going 6 games without a win, that just wouldn't happen nowadays. In terms of the social media side of it, the kind of mood of the fans would be completely different in terms of calling for managers to be sacked now. It's a totally different time now. So I think on one hand you can say, yes, it's potentially an overreaction when you look at the bare facts of the form and that we're only 4 points behind. There's plenty of opportunity to turn that around. We still need to play them another 3 times. They've still got to go to, other tough grounds in the league. We've still got the kind of World Cup break to come up, which kind of nobody's really sure about how that might impact this season in terms of the injuries that could bring if they come back and they don't quite hit the form that they've been in, all that sort of stuff. We get players back, so we start hitting a bit of form hopefully, and that could change things. But when you're actually watching the games and you're seeing the performances that we're putting in, I go back to what I said before, I don't see how you can go from that level of performance to where we need to get to. It needs a massive upturn, and that's what I think where a lot of the fans are coming from in terms of them wanting a change.
Dougie, I don't think we should lump all of this just on Gio. There are other people involved in this. I think one we need to look at is Ross Wilson. As I say, Gio's getting a lot of criticism, and a lot of it's merited, especially when it comes to the performances. But you would have to say that the recruitment at this particular moment in time, it looks like our January business has been nothing short of shambolic, really. So when you look at the players that have come in, Davies, he's now starting to have an impact. Yilmaz, barely seen him. I think Wednesday night was the first time we'd really seen him. Matondo has been really, really poor. Cholak's obviously been a success. Lawrence, injured, looked like he was going to be a success. Suter, injured. Tillman, looks like he's a good player, and it looks to me like he could play at a very high level, but quite young. Looks like he's got, as we said earlier on, the heart of a mouse at the moment, and just not quite grasping the Scottish game. They've all came in. Only really Cholak has made an impact, actually, which is poor. When you consider the huge profits that we made from the sales of Aribo, Bassey, Nathan Patterson, and when you consider Gio got us to the Champions League and the money that came in from that, you would really question, A, did we spend the money that came in wisely, and B, did we spend enough of that money? Because I would argue, I think we all expected maybe 1 or 2 more to come in when we secured the Champions League, and that didn't happen. So, I think Ross Wilson comes into the spotlight here. Big question marks over, in terms of the business out in the summer, superb. The amount of money that's come in, and maybe that's what's, the club are looking at the moment. That's what's making them happy. But in terms of the players that have come in, the clocks go back next week, and really only one of them's had an impact.
Yeah, we're being accused of all sorts in the thread just now because we're defending Gio. But I think when we're defending Gio, it comes with context, and for me, a huge amount of context comes with the cards that he's been dealt, both in terms of the injuries that we've spoken about, but the signings that he's been given in the summer have not been good enough. You'd mentioned some of the players there, Colin. I'm going to, I've got some notes here. I'm going to just read through some of the notes. So Saturday's team included a 40-year-old goalkeeper, a 37-year-old central midfielder, and a soon-to-be 34-year-old centre mid at right wing. For all the criticism of Mark Allen, who was Ross Wilson's predecessor, 7 of that starting 11 were signed by Mark Allen, and I think that tells its own story around the quality of recruitment. Since Ross Wilson came in, we've spent over £23 million on players. £11 million of that was this summer. And we'll come on to the board in a second and whether we think that the board have backed Gio, especially after the European run, qualification for the Champions League, the record sales that we've had in Patterson, Aribo and Bassey. That's still a lot of money for Rangers to be spending. We've got £8 million worth of talent that hasn't really kicked the ball this season, or hasn't. When it comes to Hadji, Roof's now coming back in. Add in John Suter. We've got so many players just on the sidelines through injury. We've apparently ring-fenced £10 million worth of investment from this season to sign James Sands and Malik Tillman permanently in the summer. I think I mentioned it before when Liverpool came to Ibrox. Both of those players sat on the bench and didn't get any game time. So, £10 million is a lot of money. Well, I'm sure we'll talk at a later date around whether we would sign Sands or Tillman, but this is a lot of money that's being ring-fenced or is being spent on the players. And the squad isn't good enough. And you just need to look at the existing squad as well. You've got 8 players out of contract in the summer. 2 of them are key assets in Kent and Morelos. I've seen Stephen Clifford from Four Lads Had a Dream today say that our wage bill is currently £5 million a season over our budget. So, for me, there's a lot wrong with our squad right now. A hell of a lot. It's almost a perfect storm right now with fingers getting pointed at various places. But for me, with 23 players being signed under Ross Wilson and only a handful actually being successful, I think a lot of them are getting pointed at Ross Wilson right now. And I think if you are talking about sacking people, which is never nice, and we don't want to see anybody lose their job, if fingers are being pointed at Gio, I think there's some serious conversations to be had about Ross Wilson.
Brian, the board as well, when you consider, things like MyJers, an absolute farce. We're releasing 4 kits a season, absolute farce. £60, I think I was £62 when you included the fee that comes along with buying your tickets. £62 for Champions League tickets. Supporters are being asked to put in a lot. I mean, there isn't a day goes by when I don't get an email from Rangers offering to sell me something. It is just constant. Store this, store that, blah blah blah. Buy a brick. All the usual stuff. And obviously, a couple of seasons ago, we were asked to put our hands in our pockets for the COVID season when we knew we weren't getting access to the ground. I bought my 2 season tickets. And I know I don't want to be overly critical of the board because when you consider where we were and what they've done, it's difficult to be too critical. But they are taking the piss, I think, when it comes to extracting money for us. And you would have to argue, what are we getting back from that right now? I in terms of, I had a real issue with Gio in his press conference in the Champions League, giving it, we simply can't compete at this level. You know what I mean? That's just the way it is. And I'm thinking, well, your board are charging me £62 to come and watch this, for fuck's sake. I don't want to see my manager telling me we can't compete at this level when the guys that employ you are charging me £60 to come and watch it. So yeah, they do deserve a bit of criticism in this. I think, you know, I don't think this is just all on Gio. We know there's problems. We know he's, you know, the type of performance he's in, the brand of football that he's playing is dire. But I don't think it's just all on him. You know, we've looked at Ross Wilson and the board as well. You know, it's some of the stuff I just find it farcical and so frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, there's culpability in this, you know, to go all round, to be honest, right from the top, right down to Gio. It's not just one person. It's a failure at all levels, to be honest. I think we said it when they released the fourth kit and when they priced the Champions League ticket. It was said on the pod that they were taking the piss, and we all kind of agreed with that. And, you know, if you're asking supporters to put in all that money, and let's be honest, Rangers fans do. Rangers fans buy all the merch, you know, anything with a Rangers badge on it, you know, fans will buy it. They know that, they take advantage of that, and they know they'll sell it. And, you know, right now we're not getting back what we would expect in terms of on the park. You know, everybody hoped when we qualified for the Champions League that we would go and invest some of that money into the team. We didn't do it in the last days of the transfer window when it was glaringly obvious that there was holes in that team that needed filling, and we chose not to do it for one reason or another. And, you know, that was another disappointment. And then, you know, they're again asking us to fork out more money for strips and what have you. And it's all these things get magnified when performances on the pitch aren't what they should be, and when results are starting to take a turn for the worse. It's just, you know, good results will kind of paper over any cracks, and right now the results and the performances are poor, so all these kind of issues are getting magnified and getting talked about. But there's absolutely, you know, responsibility on all of the board and all the kind of senior management team at the club on this. It's not just Gio and his staff, it's everybody, to be honest. They all need to kind of be taking a bit of a look in the mirror and saying, right, what can I do to improve things? What changes can I make to improve things? And I'd hope they are doing that, because they need to.
Dougie, how do you think this is going to play out? Because again, going back to the preview show on Friday, myself and Craig were talking, and we were sort of saying, you know, the World Cup's coming up, 5 games or something like that. We're obviously struggling at the moment form-wise. We've got a few injuries. Just win those 5 games. You know, it's 5 fixtures that are winnable. Just do everything you can to win those games, get to this break, and then, you know, gives us a chance to get players back, take stock, and see where we can go from here. First game, drop points, all that kind of thing. And, you know, we're talking earlier on about the fans are turning. We're getting stuck on the chat because we're even suggesting that maybe it's, you know, we're not even defending Gio. We're just, you know, looking at it from a broader perspective. But how do you think this plays out? Because if I'm being honest, as I said earlier on, I'm not convinced by Gio, but I'm not quite sure we're at the point of sacking him yet. But I genuinely don't think the board are anywhere near sacking this guy. I think it's going to take a huge collapse before we get there. I see a lot of talk online about, well, is he going this week? Is he going next week? I genuinely wonder if we're there yet, because I think he's bought a lot of air miles with the European final. He's bought even more air miles with the Champions League qualification and getting the money in. I genuinely think the board are going to give this guy time. I certainly think they're going to give him till at least the World Cup and after that break. How do you see it going?
I think Gio earned goodwill with the likes of the European run. I think the board will understand the context of the high injury list. But it's what I said earlier on. It's the fans that will dictate the future of Giovanni van Bronckhorst. And I was with you. I listened to the preview pod as well, Colin. And like Brian said, I agreed with you in terms of the performances have been poor, but whilst we're still getting results and we're still in touching distance, you can't sack a manager with the record that Gio has. You know, he's got a better record. You know, we're sitting in a better position this season than we are last. I think we all knew that Champions League was going to be tough, but I think the Champions League hidings that we've been given is what's pushing it over the edge just now. I think a lot of fans are not happy at the embarrassment of 7-1 in their own backyard against Liverpool, for example. So for me, I was agreeing, get to the winter break, get to the World Cup. Hopefully, with maximum points, we're in the Cup semi-final. We can go out of Europe, as far as I care. We've got our money from the Champions League. Focus domestically, focus on the league. So I was with you, get to the World Cup, maximum points, and then hopefully see some signings in January. But between now and then, there's a lot of domestic football to be played. Aberdeen's huge. I'm not understating Aberdeen. The Aberdeen game, I think if we get beat against Aberdeen, I think that could be it, because it's at Ibrox. It's a rivalry. It's on the back of a poor Dundee game, a poor result against Livy, unexpected
hiding in Naples.
Unexpected hiding in Naples, who have just beat Roma. I seen the thread. I think if we go and get beat against Aberdeen, I think you mentioned Ibrox being toxic. Against Livy, I think Ibrox will be murder against Aberdeen, and I think the Ibrox fans will potentially force the hand. And as I said earlier on, it'll be a sad day because whilst there's a lot of criticism in the chat tonight about Gio, excuse me, he's delivered the best moment of my life. Stuart has set up a brilliant new website. If you've not seen it yet, check out the website. But he asked us all to do a bio, and he asked us all to give our favourite Rangers moment. I think half of us all said the route to Seville and the Leipzig game in particular. So it's sad that we're in this position. I mentioned already about Gerrard's time at the club and the reason why Gerrard left. Gerrard wasn't backed in the summer, but Gerrard wasn't backed because he didn't deliver. He didn't get Champions League football. His team failed to beat a 10-man Malmo. Gio, for me, has taken us to a European final. He's earned good grace by getting us to the Champions League. He's deserved to have more money spent to strengthen this team. If he can get to January unscathed, then I would like to see us spend some money. I've seen somebody in the chat mention some names. We were linked with the likes of Nicholas Raskin in the summer as a potential box-to-box central midfield player. Excuse me. Nicholas Raskin's out of contract in the summer of 2023. We may see us go back in for players like Nicholas Raskin in January and pick them up for more affordable pricing, more in our price range. I think if we can sign the right players in the right positions in January, and it's a team that Gio buys into and that buy into Gio, then anything can happen. We mentioned drop points earlier on. I think there's still a lot of points to be won and lost in this league. But right now, as I'm sitting here, I can't even remember what day we're at, I don't have a watch on. I currently, as things stand, don't think that we'll win the league under Gio. And whilst other supporters have that feeling and that fear, I can't see him finishing the season as Rangers manager.
What about yourself, Brian? I mean, you were saying earlier on that you can't see him bridging the gap from where we are at the moment to where we need to be. Do you see him getting any more time, or do you think like Dougie at the end of the week, if we get beat off Aberdeen, that will prompt the board to take some action?
I'm a bit kind of in two minds about it. I kind of agree with you, Colin, that I don't get the sense this board are anywhere near sacking him. I don't get the sense this board have got the kind of ruthlessness you need to sack a manager when, if you're from the outside looking in, you could make the argument that it's an overreaction. But I also agree with Dougie that Aberdeen game is huge. And what I don't want to happen is I don't want to see scenes that we've seen at Villa with the fans singing out of our club. I don't want that for Gio. I would rather, if they're going to do it now. I don't want them to wait until fans are actively calling for him to be sacked or singing songs about get out of our club. I don't think Rangers fans would do that. But I don't want to see that. Gio's got a great legacy as a player here. I don't want him to tarnish that because things get too sour. So for me, I would rather they act quickly and they act decisively. It might not be a nice thing to do. Nobody ever wants MD to see MD lose their job. But for me, sitting here right now, much like Dougie, I just can't see getting the improvement out of those players that we need to get to win the league.
Yeah, strange times when you consider where we were in May, that we're sitting here having this conversation. And even when we were in August, qualifying for the Champions League and stuff like that, it's surreal. But I mean, there's no doubt that results, as I said, I don't think are that bad. But the performances, the level of the performances are, it feels like the fag end of Alex McLeish's reign to me. You know what I mean? We were watching some proper shite football at that stage as well. I don't know. We'll see where we end up. All I know is I can't watch much merry what's getting served up, like, you know what I mean? It's pretty grim. But before I just quickly go on and have a wee look at the Napoli game, need to mention our other partners at Zenith Coins, who produce the official Rangers Club coin. Each gold-plated coin has a unique serial number engraved on the outer rim, and it comes complete with a Rangers presentation box and certificate of authenticity. A host of famous fans, including Alan McCoy, Sterry Johnson, Marvin Andrews, Tom Stoltman, Gordon Ramsay, all on one of these collections. Zenith has also produced a 150th anniversary collection, which is limited to 1,872 sets worldwide, and are being released in small batches. These celebrate 5 iconic milestones of Rangers history, which include the founding fathers, Ibrox Stadium, the Cup Winners' Cup in 1972, 9 in a row, and 55 league titles. If you're looking for more information on that, get yourself onto the website at www.zenithcoins.com and use discount code GN10. Right, guys, just a quick sort of wrap up in terms of Wednesday night. We're off to Naples and Napoli, and I mean, Brian, it's been when I think back, Forfars and Annans and all that kind of stuff, the Champions League was just like an ultimate dream. Never going to get that again, and we have got it again, and it's turned out to be a bit of a nightmare. I've got to be honest with you, I'm kind of scunnered with it already. It's just became, I know we get the money out of it and all the rest of it, and we've seen some great teams at Ibrox, Napoli and Liverpool, but I'm just getting a bit scunnered with it, to be honest with you. It's not what we were hoping for, and it's almost becoming like a chore, if you know what I mean. I'm looking at Wednesday night thinking, I'm going to have to watch this game, you know what I mean? So how are you feeling?
I'm much the same, to be honest. My only hope is probably not for this season. I think this season in Europe's gone for us, unfortunately. But my only hope is that, in much the way Club Brugge have, that we take this experience and we learn from it, and we say, right, okay, Champions League didn't go our way in any shape or form this season, but we still want to be back there next season. The players, I hope, have got that hunger to be back there next season and learn from this experience and improve on it. You only get better by playing these teams, and yeah, we might need to take a few beatings along the way, but I'm kind of clinging on to hope that out the back of this, the players will learn from it, and we can, in seasons time, kind of, compete a bit better in the Champions League, and we won't feel as out of our depth. But as for Wednesday night, I think it's going to be a difficult tie. That's always, I think Napoli are one of the form teams in Europe just now, so it's a massive task. And
and officially no away support either as well, which I know there'll be some players in there, but officially there won't be.
Yeah, I think that just makes it all the more difficult, doesn't it? You've just kind of got to hope that the players go out there with the attitude of, look, we've kind of, let's just give it our all, put everything on the line, and just try our best to get something. But it is going to be a mammoth task, to say the least.
Okay, compared to the previous sort of 3 or 4 years, in the Europa League, where we've had some great nights which culminated in reaching the final last year. It's all came to a shuddering halt this season, and as I said, it's starting to feel like a bit of a chore. Is that how you're feeling about Wednesday?
Yeah, but I was going to mention Club Brugge as well, Brian. I mentioned it in one of the pods that I was on after a European game. I think it might have been after the Liverpool game, where I spoke about. We had to make the step up to the Champions League to move away from being a Europa League team. You see USG and PSV doing well in the Europa League this season after we knocked them out to get to the Champions League. And I think that's the difference in level between the Champions League and the Europa League. It's a huge step up. And I think if we wanted to improve year on year, we had to face the Champions League and get the money, and we need to do it consistently, as Brian said, like Club Brugge have done 5 out of 6 years. They are now sitting top of their group. That's what we need to do. We need to take some of the pumpings that we've had this season. But, after I made the comment about Gio delivering some of the best moments, I've seen some comments about he's also delivered some of the worst. Liverpool 7-1 at Ibrox. We've never conceded 7 goals at Ibrox before. So that's an embarrassment. It's a low point. But I think getting into the game against Napoli, I think it was summed up perfectly by one of our listeners, CGM55, when he says, Napoli away gives me the absolute fear. And that's how I'm feeling right now. We go over to Naples, and it's actually on this day that we drew 0 each against Barcelona under Walter Smith. That's what we need to hope for. Excuse me. We need to not be so open. We also need to not chuck it. You know, if we do concede a couple of goals against Napoli and we are behind, we cannot chuck it, because that's what we've been doing in Europe. When we conceded the goals against Liverpool, a few heads went down and we stopped trying. We need to make sure that we do fight for the full 90 minutes so that it's not an embarrassing scoreline, and that for me is all I could hope for from midweek. Napoli are the on-form team. They're top of the group for a reason. I highly doubt we'll get anything. The dream would be to get a point. That means that you get Ajax back to Ibrox in the last group game with a fighting chance of making the Europa League. Sitting here right now, I have zero confidence in anything to play for in that last game against Ajax. And it's sad because, as you said, Colin, as supporters, we've paid a lot of money for these games. There's some supporters that have paid £72 to go and see Rangers versus Ajax at Ibrox. And if we don't get the right result against Napoli, it's going to be a dead rubber.
Yeah, an interesting week ahead, and I think we'll call time there. So a big thanks to Dougie and Brian for their contributions there tonight. Great stuff as always. We were live tonight, guys, as some of the comments suggested. We were live tonight, but the pod will be available to download and stream on a variety of platforms from tomorrow, including Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, Spotify, your usual places. I think myself and Ek are going to try and get something out through the week for the Napoli game. And obviously we'll have the show next Sunday night looking at the Aberdeen game. In the meantime, get yourself onto the Gersnet website and forums at www.gersnet.co.uk. Guys, a bit tough just now, but you know, we soldier on and keep going, and you never know. Okay, and so until next time, bye for now.